Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Computer Wednesday. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Apple versus Windows on 2020 year. And this is a pro Apple video. Next video will be pro Windows one. So you have to understand the first thing, the moment you say Apple, the first thing people think about is expensive. Then the question becomes why? So the why is basically whenever you are buying, let's say a Dell or a Lenovo or whatever have you, IBM or something like that, you are just paying for the hardware. The software has been taken care by Microsoft. Here it's not like that. When you buy iMac, let's say, basically Apple is the one who is selling you the hardware plus the software. For this reason, by default it becomes inherently more expensive. Then because they are closing off, everything is closed off, they have to develop everything. Basically they have to develop the driver, they have to develop every aspect of the system. That requires a very significant amount of basically, let's say, driver team IT professionals that are working inside. Basically, to give you an example, think of it this way. There is a company, Menalox, that makes let's say networking infrastructure devices, and they are like, okay, I made this one and I'm gonna sell it to public. Now public is gonna buy this and they're gonna connect it in their Windows machine, and the moment they connect it, it's like it's not working. Let's say something is just driver is not working. Now what will common public will do? They will simply buy something else. For this reason, Menalox themselves will develop the driver. Now when you are talking about Apple, it's not like Apple is building this. It's not like the display on your iOS or something like that is made by Apple. Apple is buying it. They may be buying from LG, they may be buying it from Samsung, whatever the case may be. So they are buying it. They are buying the processor, they are buying the graphics card processor generally from Intel, graphics card generally from AMD. So they are buying it. Basically SSD generally from Samsung. They are buying it, they are assembling it. So the problem in those sort of scenario is that Samsung is not going to be responsible if you are buying memory chips. They are not going to be responsible for driver integration. That's your problem. So that inherently makes them like they have to spend a lot more professional, lot more time, energy, resources to make the thing damn work. Basically because it's a closed ecosystem, seller is not taking care of it, you have to take care of it. So this inherently makes it expensive. Now on the other end, their business model is basically they have to sell the product and recover the cost of retail and service chain. To simplify it in this way, let's say you want to buy a Dell PC, and I'm talking early 2000, heck, let's say till 2010 when I bought my first PC, is that you could have called Dell or you could have used the website and directly would have ordered, created a basically quotation and just bought a computer. And if there has been a fault, they will send a worker to your home and they're like, okay, they're gonna fix whatever it's needing fixing, or sometimes they will replace it. That's Dell's model. So the benefit of that is Dell only has to stock a basically warehouse, and they will have a small institute for training workers and all that. So that's Dell approach. What Apple does, Apple is like, no, we will not sell our thing online. Of course now they have started selling it, but they resisted the urge for very long, and you never was a time where it was like, okay, you can just call up Apple and Apple is gonna give something to you. So they have to basically invest in the retail shop. Now Apple invest so much time. Like Apple is about a psychology, it's about a mentality. So they spend a lot of time into building the quote unquote Apple experience, quote unquote best of the best. So this experience is expensive basically. So it's not free. Basically any like the amount of product they're selling from this large of a space, they have to pay a very large premium for this. On top of that, in terms of repair also, people have to come, people have to bring their equipment to you. Now this may sound okay, it should be cheaper, but it's actually more expensive because you want that quote unquote experience. You have to have a genius bar, and then you have to have people who are doing the repair, and you have to pay them constantly. So think of it this way, Dell can have like, okay, I only have 50 workers and they are going as the demands go by, and sometimes demands goes up, then they will hire a few extra subcontractors. Apple have to stock every shop. Let's say there is a shop that has the Genius Bar and they have only 3 employees. The 3 employees have to get paid monthly. It does not matter whether somebody came in or not came in, like utilizing the service. So this itself costs more. Now these are ethical things. These are something like, okay, we are doing it this way, it's costing them. There is another Apple tax, but again, that's a vague term. That's like you chose that. So these are the mechanical reason why it's so expensive, and I'm not going to go into Apple tax. So there are certain good aspects about Apple. The first being, they are generally known for pushing tech, even as early as their first Apple. And you can see Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs working together. The technology at that time they were using, they were like trying to push it. They were really pushing the boundaries, so to say. So this you can easily see in early laptops. Is basically they became the first one to introduce NVMe SSD. Think of it this way, at this time you could have bought the best laptop available. You could have only gotten, if you're lucky, SSD, SATA 6 SSD, so only 6 GB per second. Now here they were giving NVMe, and they were making sure no matter the cheapest laptop, they will still give you NVMe SSD. Not the latest and greatest, the best world the best has ever seen, but they were giving giving you this creates a feel. The moment somebody describes, hey, apples are smooth, it's jitter free and smooth, that is the reason, because they are pushing the technology. NVMe they pushed before that. It was not that it was not available for Dell, or it was like they were like holding back. They were like, okay, let the market be ready. Apple makes their own market. So in terms of technology, that was a big issue. Second, Intel was kind of frustrated with USB, because you have to understand, whenever you're talking about, like, let's say chipset and all that, the processor manufacturer also has to worry about that, because processor, chipset, then you have controllers. Basically, processor will talk to the chipset, chipset will talk to the controller, controller will talk to the USB hub and all that, whatever have you. So Intel wanted to streamline that or make a better one. So they created Thunderbolt infrastructure. Now again, anybody could have paid for it, bought for it, but only Apple did. So for early years, like, if you wanted Thunderbolt, basically it was 10 times ahead. Early days, it was 10 times ahead of anything you can get from, let's say, USB systems. They were like, okay, flat out only Apple had that, and Apple pushed USB-C to a much further extent, because they bought USB-C. Not USB-C is open standard, but they're like, they bought USB-C hardware, they put it in their laptop, and they combined basically Thunderbolt through that USB. That is the reason Apple's quote-unquote USB-C is on a different level. Flat out, you can't have basically at this point in time. There have been some upgrades. There, some people are pushing it, specifically Dell. They are pushing things, but Apple was the first who can be like, okay, you can charge your laptop with the same cable and still have a display output of upwards of 5K using your own system. So it was a completely different ball game. They were pushing USB-C also. So all these things combined gives a actual expectation. And the one thing for crying out loud, every damn laptop manufacturer sucks at, is they give really the cheapest webcam they can buy. Apple actually tries to give you a useful webcam. Like, I'm actually surprised, like, even on an expensive laptop, the webcams are generally, are you serious? Like are you seriously sure this is the webcam that you want to sell? And it's not like webcams are expensive. Webcams are basically the same camera module that is used in your front facing mobile camera, and it's on a different volume. It's like, what? So those things creates an experience. Like, people buy basically, let's MacBooks, and they're like, hey, it works, it's smooth, it's polished, hey, webcam, it actually looks decent. So all these things combined creates a mythos around it. Then the other aspect, because it's a closed infrastructure and because they are charging so much, people will not tolerate, like, it's one thing to tolerate some issue on a, like, let's say $100 laptop. Another issue is to tolerate something going wrong in, like, let's say $5,000 laptop. So they really put effort into polishing the driver. This is one of the things that you can tangibly say, oh, Macs are generally better. So this gives them full hardware utilization. Now this is a critical aspect. This was the primary reason when why Android was, like, in early years was very sluggish, because Google was still developing it and they had no handshake between the hardware and the software. So everybody was making their own thing. Basically, Samsung was making their Exynos, Hawaii was making their own system, Kiron system, there was Mari was making another architecture. Everybody was, even though quote unquote they were using ARM architecture, everybody was making their own thing. So there was no hardware and software integration. Apple flat out does not have to worry about that. They're like, okay, they will talk, the hardware and the software team, they will have a talk, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna make an operating system that can work flawlessly with 32 gigabyte. Do not put more than 32 gigabyte. The reason for that, you may think, okay, like just put more and it's better. It's for Windows, because Windows are coming down from server industry. So but for common day-to-day use, it's actually backfires on you. So they're like, because of, they are like, okay, limited to 32, they push the hardware, they push the software, and both of them are working together. That gives you a much more polished experience. Like, to give you a simpler use case example of that, Apple became the first company to properly give 10 gigabyte per second on almost every computer they were selling. So it's not that Windows did not have that. In Windows, either you had to buy PCI Express card or some motherboard that had to deal with a lot of software issues to such a degree that even though you had quote unquote 10 gigabytes, you were only getting 300 Mbps. You're supposed to get 1 gigabyte per second, but they were not happening, because there are a lot of extra layers of issues that you have to deal with when you're talking about, like, an open infrastructure. Here they did not have to worry. So when they say they are giving you 10 gigabyte, they are giving you 10 gigabyte. And subtle touches, like whenever somebody says Apple has a best display, they are referring to per pixel color correction based on operating system itself. So operating system, aka Apple, is deciding what the color is supposed to look. So that way, even if you connect an external monitor, and if it's a good monitor, you will get a very good vibrant experience. You will not get that in Windows, simply because Windows is like, hey, let's say Blackmagic is running the operating system, DaVinci Resolve. The DaVinci Resolve will decide what the color should be. So it does give the developers much more basically headroom room, but it gives your experience to be very varied. Sometimes you will be like, hey, it does not look good. Sometimes you'll be like, hey, this looks great. So that kind of causes complications. And people don't like complications. Like, hey, I just connected a monitor is supposed to look exactly how my laptop monitor is. Apple can easily accomplish that. It's not that Windows cannot accomplish, but Windows have to go through extra steps. And generally, if you talk about Apple people they don't know about compatibility issue because they don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about it. Like when Vista came along, it was like, damn, it was like, I have I lived through going from XP to Vista. Almost every application that I was installing, compatibility issue. Even in Windows 10, you still have that. Of course, the problem has been solved, and Windows 10 has been going on for 3 to 5 years. So the problem has subsided, but you have to understand, in Mac world, it's very simple. Either it works or it does not work. They don't have to worry about compatibility. So there is Polish driver makes your life easier. Now, so whenever you are talking about the ethos of Apple, what does Apple sell to the customer? They are just selling it works. It just works. You don't have to think about it. It just works. So how the heck they are achieving it? Basically, they are achieving it because they are controlling the experience you're supposed to get. Now, again, it's a dual-edged sword, and next video where I'm going to talk about Windows experience, you will understand that. But in this one, think of it this way: they give you iTunes, and they decide which feature you're supposed to have or not. To give you an example, earlier they used to have a FaceTime capture, basically video capture for if you want to record your video calls and all that, because it was Skype integrated. Now again, they removed it. You can't complain about this because this is what you are signed up for. When you buy Apple, this is what you signed up for. Apple decides for you. Benefit of that, because Apple limits your what you can do, the quality of the applications are much higher. Like iTunes just works. Like you can try to put like 10,000 albums in iTunes. Try putting 10,000 albums in Windows Media Player. It's not that it will not work. It's just you can easily say, hey, okay, there is a very giant difference here. So this controlled experience really helps Apple to polish their thing. Even with they are only giving you, let's say, 10 software, they can make sure that 10 softwares are damn awesome. Now, this is one thing they everybody who uses Windows is envious of. Like, this is one technology that for some reason Windows is still not using, is basically time machine backup. It's on a different level. To give you a context, the biggest problem with backups is nobody does it. Like, and why don't they do it? Basically, do you know where the backup is in your Windows system? And you might be like, okay, I can type backup. You will get backup and restore. Now in backup, there will be like backup files or backup the system. Again, why there are those two things? Because you have to understand, Windows is coming down from enterprise to home. They are thinking in an enterprise mindset. Now, does Windows have everything? Yes and no. To give you a context, in Time Machine, you can not only just back up your computer, when you reinstall, basically restore it, it goes to so far, like where you're like, okay, let's say I have 3ds Max. 3ds Max is installed. Awesome. The interface selection changes that I made in 3ds Max is also restored. Think of it this way: basically, if you have custom menus, keyboard shortcuts and all that, those are also restored. Like, that is flat out not easily possible with Windows. You can do that with drive cloning, but other than that, you can't do that. So that's the benefit of it. Like, it just works. Apple know that fact. Like, people will not gonna back up it if you are asking like them 15 questions. They are like, turn it on, connect a hard drive. This is time. This is the time you're gonna need. So there is a very serious reality of this. Like, people who have Apple, generally they can back up their thing. They can back up it very easily, and more people actually back it up. And I have provided a very detailed basically description about this and down the links below. You can see somebody who's like dealing with this for 20 years. They're like, dude, it's not that Windows does not have it. Like, of course, that part where the software will be installed and the basically state of the software will also be installed. Those are tricky things, and that was the inherent idea with registry. When the registry was made commonly available in Windows Vista, that was the whole idea, that registry will be copied so you can have that proper backup, but it did not work out that way. So this is one thing that is tangibly better. Like, tangibly, you don't even have to worry about it. It's just like plug a hard drive, backup. And the other aspect, the hassle-free operation of whole system is tuned for you. Basically, when you have let's say Adobe After Effects or whatever have you, let's say Adobe Premiere for your video editing, like I am doing, you have to figure out like, hey, do I have CUDA course or not? Do I have will I enable CUDA course or not? In case of Final Cut, working in basically iOS or basically Mac OS, they don't have to worry about that, because everything is controlled. They know whether you're gonna have this core or not, whether you're gonna do this or not. So all these things just works. That is why. Now, of course, it's not like this never breaks or iTunes is perfectly awesome, but overall, like if you take 10,000 experiences from Windows user and 10,000 experience from basically Mac users, you will find Mac users to be more satisfied. Now, you can say, oh, they are just dumb people, or again, who cares? Like, I'm not gonna sit down there and like, yeah, backup this folder, don't backup this folder, let me select this, do not increase the file size more than 4 gigabyte. Like there are hundreds of things. I'm not supposed to worry about that. Like I just want backup. That's the whole point. Like this is tangibly one thing that Windows user really need, because otherwise the only thing I have tangibly backed up is basically my photo albums, because I have physically copied in like 3 to 4 hard drive. So you have to understand, when people say it just works, they are not being sarcastic or like, you know, pompous. There is a reason for that. There is just an actual reason for this. So this was my presentation on basically Pro iOS. Next video would be about Windows. I hope you liked it, learn from it. In that case, please click the like button. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I would urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me your extra disappointment, and please leave a comment because I reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.